Okay, everybody, I hope this finds you doing well. This will provide a little bit of insight regarding some of the nuance that I'll be presenting on my presentation on Wednesday. Now, with that stated, at this point, if you've not already received a push notification from me through TeamBuilder, you will shortly. Now, when you go ahead and log in, your username will be your email address from Grinnell, and your password will just be lowercase Grinnell. I also created 10 dummy user profiles that the students can use when they come in. I'm not sure how many students are coming in. I can always create more if we need more, but I did create 10 of them for our students, or for these students, I should say. I'm going to pause this right here and go to another slide. So hang on. From a programming standpoint, just in terms of generalities, I tend to design and develop programming that goes from general to specific, simple to complex, lower intensity to higher intensity, and higher volume down to lower volume. And I use two main or primary models in my methodology, and one of which is just training from athleticism to the individual athlete, and the other is specific to hypertrophy to peaking as another taxonomy for how I go ahead and organize my training. So as a for instance, when I think of training, I think in terms of training for overall athleticism first, then for the specific sport demands, then the position the person might be participating in, third baseman are different than first baseman, then pitchers and catchers. And then you have training for the individual as well. And usually that requires a conversation with the sports medicine team because there might be some issues that we have to resolve in the training methodology. Now, if we take this a step further, and we go ahead and look at this in terms of general to specific and simple to complex and low intensity to high intensity and high volume to low volume, it has its place here, but where this really is applicable is in this model. And in this model, you have the hypertrophy phase on the bottom, which is typified by higher volume, and then base strength, power peaking. And with this model, when you go from hypertrophy to peaking, the peaking phase, very much like your swimmers and runners when we do tapers going into a competition, we try to have our athletes peaking at the right moment. And, power and peaking are usually reserved for either test out times or for times of very high competitive events like a conference meet and or nationals. And so again, the overlay on this from general to specific, simple to complex, as you ascend in the hierarchical order of this taxonomy, you end up having this generalized training that's more simple in nature, that is of lower intensity and higher volume. Once you get up here, it's quite the opposite. So let's go ahead and take this a step further. If you want to see this in another way to think about it, would be general to specific, simple to complex, low intensity to high intensity, higher volume to low volume. And please remember the Roy G. Biv here, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, because that'll play out here in a second. I'm going to go ahead and switch screens to a yearly overview for both sports. Okay, so here we are in a spreadsheet format. And again, using that taxonomy that we talked about before, that Roy G. Biv, with the hypertrophy, base strength, power peaking. With women's soccer in 2024, now I had to put women's soccer in TeamBuilder in February of 24, not February of 25. And I'll guide you through how to get to there so you can review those workouts. But I had to do that because, quite frankly, I couldn't have two different sports on the same calendar in TeamBuilder at the same time. It would have been incredibly confusing. So let's just jump back to this. If we look at this in terms of our athletes, we would end up having a base hypertrophy phase in the early part of the off season here in Meso 1. And by that, you come back, you're on campus, you have 2 weeks of higher volume and lower intensity workouts. And then we develop a base strength, and then into power, and then spring break. We don't have the time window to take it all the way into a bona fide power peaking phase. And quite frankly, many of the athletes that we're talking about, this will be their first exposure to a organized training program, and quite frankly, they're going to need some additional volume on the front end to be able to handle the rigors of training on the back end. So now if we look at the 2024 current in-season, same idea. We're starting off with a little bit higher volume environment. We'll go base strength, and then we go into October where we have strength and power. So the in-season is denoted here by the IS, but also the gray on the calendar. And then you go into a power and a peaking for conference. So let's just presume our soccer players are doing great and they're going to go ahead and they go through conference and they mow everybody down. We then pull them back out. We go ahead and increase the volume a little bit, and then we go into a second round of power and then take them through a peaking phase to prep them for nationals. And so to that end, if this doesn't happen and say like we don't do well at conference, then this automatically switches to an off-season training mode, and we go right into like a red hypertrophy phase. And probably some of the athletes that we're working with and we're talking about, they'll have the training age and the chronological age for me to maybe jump them right into a base strength, and we can kind of expedite their process a little bit. And then we go active recovery and then finals. Now, a little thing about finals, and you'll see this in the other calendar here, is I don't have my athletes test out on finals. And if we look at the spring of 2025, same idea, hypertrophy, base strength, power. We go into spring break. That window's just a little bit tight to be able to take our athletes all the way into a peaking phase. We come back from spring break. We then jump into a base strength, power, and then power into a multi-rep test out phase. So not doing one rep test outs, but maybe sets of 3 or sets of 4 or sets of 2, and we can mathematically calculate that out, whether it's an Epley formula or some of the other logarithmic formulas we can use, but we can calculate out what their maximal weights would be. And also there'd be a conversation to be had here between what the sport coach might want to have so they can evaluate their athletes. Would they prefer 300-yard shuttle? Do they want 40-yard dash? Do they want flying 40s? It kind of depends on what the coach wants. But I mean, I know in my head, I have my standard things that I look for lactic acid, energy system, sprintability, power in terms of vertical jump, broad jump, power clean for power development, and then squats and also bench press. And as we go through, that'll be one test out, and then they have finals. I don't like the idea of having my athletes test out during finals. I'd rather have them test out the week before finals, and then they can come in and work out at their leisure. Let's face it, finals are pretty stressful, and testing out is yet another stressor that is placed on the athlete. And it's just too much to be able to ask your athletes to be able to manage all that. So I prefer my athletes to test out the week before, and then they can come in and work out at their leisure as a way to cope and manage their stress levels during finals, as opposed to adding yet another stressor on top of them. And then we go right into this, basically the early preseason phase leading into the in-season phase for soccer. They would come in the latter part of August, and now we would have a bona fide peak and test out phase for those athletes. Now, if we jump this over to swimming, we kind of have the same concept in mind here, right? The only difference is what it is I had the swimming athletes on the 2024 calendar. They are represented in early September and then October, and you'll see the workouts change in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. But some of the things that you'll notice very different between soccer and the swimming program is soccer, I'm requiring those athletes to do running technique warm-up every single time they come in. I want them to become more proficient at running, and I want them to immediately apply that to their field of play. With my swimmers, I don't really focus too much on running technique in here, but what I have them focusing on is doing any number of drills on a BOSU or on a physio ball, because that dampens the equal and opposite force production and yield equation that we have. We apply force into the ground and we get force out of the ground. And if we put a person on a physio ball or a BOSU, it dampens the force application. And what ends up happening is it ends up being more like a swimming environment, because you don't get the same force yield out of water as you do in dry land. Anyways, that's a whole other conversation. So I would take them, the swimmers, through in their in-season. Their in-season would have hypertrophy, base strength, and then there's no meat down here. And then we get into like a power test out. That's at 3 rep to maybe 2 rep range. And then again, finals week, they can kind of come in at their leisure. And then we jump them right back into base strength. And I got to presume these athletes are very accustomed to working out over their Christmas break or holiday break. And so they'll end up working out here, and they'll go into base strength, power. And then we try to have them peak for conference. We scroll this up a little bit. And we have them try to peak for conference. And if we're able to, and it looks like the swimming team is a pretty darn good team, we can then go to a second power phase, and then power phase will allow us to peak for the Division III championships. Then right after that, we go right back into hypertrophy, base strength, and then we do another power test out phase, go through an off-season meso, cycle 2. We take them all the way through summer, and then when they come in the fall, right before they go into their season, we have a test out in September. We do a transitional week where it's like active recuperation, and then we go right into a hypertrophy phase. And granted, if we have some more seasoned athletes who have a higher athletic IQ and also have a higher age factor as well as a higher workout factor, if you will, meaning they've been working out more years and maybe they're a senior versus a freshman, those individuals will probably start in a base strength phase as opposed to a hypertrophy. So I'm going to pause it here real quick so you can see what's next. All right, here we go. I'm about 10 minutes into this presentation, and I've now transitioned over to Team Builder. And Team Builder, what's kind of cool is I can put things in like the team or the college logo, and I can color it. But I also have the color codification you see on these tiles in here. So these represent where there are workouts. So this is a red phase, so it's a hypertrophy phase. We know that's the deal. We're in February 24, and this is women's off soccer meso 1. So when you're in here, you can navigate around and use these different tiles to see what we did for workouts. Warm up, sprint work, and these other workouts themselves. So as you're going through, you can look at a monthly and see what we're asking our athletes to do over the course of a month. Now, in this situation, like we've gone from red into orange, so we know we've gone from hypertrophy to base strength. You can scroll this down a little bit further. Now we've gone from orange into yellow, so we're going into strength, and this will match and correspond to the calendar I showed you earlier. Little things that you'll see in here, like you'll see AAA. These are intended to be done as a group together. If we scroll this through, this would be a great week for them. They'll have 3 days to go ahead and have a nice crushing workout. And as we progress through, what I'm looking at doing is having them continue with the running technique. We then introduce in things like Olympic variations, squats as well, and you'll see the rep ranges will change from week to week to week. And what we're trying to do is, again, hold into that concept of volume and intensity are interrelated and they play off of one another. And as you increase one, you have to decrease the other. So this would be the February workout, and that's the off season for women's soccer. Now let me pause this so I can save a little time. Yeah, so on August 28th, what we see, this is the women's soccer in-season example, and that will start, I started actually on August 28th, and what you'll see is as we progress from August into September, they had a meet kind of bookended on a Friday, Sunday, and then we get into Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because there isn't a match anywhere in here, and then we have a Monday, Wednesday. Now, what's interesting about like soccer and baseball and softball is there's a little bit of finesse required with these programs because of the randomness of the game day events, which you'll see here denoted in red. So when you look at that, and as we go through and do our workouts, like on the 7th, because we have the 6th and the 8th, or there's a match on the 6th and the 8th, I'm proposing we have a recovery day where we go ahead and do some basic running technique stuff, some hollow 50-yard sprints, and I do a coach-directed Pilates and yoga. So what you'll see is some variations in here that will include some hardcore training, but also some recuperative and rehabilitative exercise. So I'm going to go ahead and save a little time here and just scroll on over. So here's October. When we get into October, now you have the different swim events on Friday the 4th, the 12th, and the 19th. It's like, for example, on the 19th, I think we have Simpson College Relays. And as you look at this, the 17th, we have a workout schedule. So again, we can work through and kind of look at these workouts, and I urge you to take a look and kind of see how they lay out. Again, I tried to keep it very user-friendly and simple for us to use. Now, if you go ahead and just take one step further, we go out to February, that'll be your swimming in season as we peak for conference. All right, guys, I wanted to keep this under 15 minutes. I basically wanted to give you the soft introduction to Team Builder, my headspace, and how I organize this. And when you get in there and you look at the little dots and the tiles and you see green, you know what it means in terms of going from hypertrophy to base strength to power to peaking, etc. And you have an understanding of my headspace. I'm looking forward to meeting all of you, and yeah, I'll see you on Wednesday. Have a great one, guys. Thank you so much. Bye.